Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon. This is now a weekly topical show. We've done several of these. People are loving them. But if you want more, go to nickdixon.net. And why wouldn't you want more? Because we've got so much good stuff on there. We've got a 1-hour interview or more with Ed Dutton, aka The Jolly Heretic, which is hilarious and controversial, talking about his book, Woke Eugenics, and how woke people are going to select themselves into extinction. So you can imagine how that conversation goes. Only on nickdixon.net because it's too spicy for the rest of the internet. We've got my article on Farage I just published that some top politicians have told me is very good, so you can get that. I've just done a piece on Bret Easton Ellis, and that's just this week. So you get all my stuff on nickdixon.net for £5 a month. It's even less than that if you get the yearly option. And you get all my work, all my solo podcasts, my extended guest episodes, my articles, and you also get to support what we're doing and fight the culture war and save the West. That's what this is all about, guys. You can save the West for just £5 a month on nickdixon.net. But I'm also doing this show for free because I'm such a nice guy. And that's The Current Thing, where we do a topical show every week. And that's what you're currently listening to. And we have our old friend returning. Starmer wants to bring back the sausages. He wants the return of the sausages. We're going one better. We've got the People's Gammon. You'll know him from GB News and the comedy world is, of course, Mr. Paul Cox. Welcome back, Paul.
Hello, Nick. What an introduction.
I know, and I've been off for a while. I just went with it.
Mate, that was brilliant. We'll get into it, but I don't see him, even though it was kind of muted, I don't see the sausage thing being lived down. It'll always be, it's one of those things that's really captured the imagination of both sides. And it's been endless sausage today, which is...
it's brought the country together, is what you're saying.
Finally. I think I'm going to quote a tweet of yours. Actually, it's a policy that we finally can get behind.
Finally, a popular Labour policy. Say what you want, but the return of the sausages, that is popular. Who doesn't want the return of the sausages? No one's ever turned down a sausage except a vegetarian. Who cares about them?
By his own measure, he was really on a roll as well. I mean, I'm not sure that he gets beyond about 40-45% in terms of a roll when compared. But he was, a peak role for Starmer.
They were clapping it up, all his bad policies, and he was like, and he got carried away. He was like, the sausages. He's like, no, it's too soon for that, Keir. That's not. Keep that one back. No, it's sausages. It's like, oh god, he's gone mental.
It doesn't even scan sausages. I guess it does. Yeah. I guess it does. Eminem would rap. Would make those two rhyme, wouldn't he?
It scans if you just don't know what you're reading at all. You've been put there. You're a robot. You've been wheeled out on stage. And you just have to read something. And you just word association. It's just like a William Burroughs novel. You're like, the return of the sausages to the baker, the butchers, and the baker, and the candlestick maker. You're just like, this is nonsense. How can you talk about a ceasefire? It was the worst possible moment because you're talking about ceasefire in Gaza. It's the most serious thing. You're talking about people's lives, these hostages, and you've just called them sausages. And also, there's kind of weird, because Jewish people don't even eat pork necessarily. You're talking about Israel, so is that a kind of weird?
Yeah.
I mean, it's deep.
He read it with such conviction as well. Both you and I have read AutoCue, and I don't know. It makes me feel like somebody actually wrote sausages in the AutoCue.
Just a mess of them, yeah. They're getting whoever wrote that's getting sacked. Imagine if it improvised. That would actually been quite good. Whoever put sausages is getting sacked from the AutoCue. This is a government of service, not a government of sausages. That would have been so good. I don't know if you saw the other day, I did headliners. I mean, I've been off for a week, so it can't have been the other day, but it was about a week or two ago, and there was no news headlines in at all in the AutoCue. Nothing in the AutoCue. Really? I had to read the headlines, and there was nothing there, and they weren't on the screen either. How can you improvise headlines? And it's at the start of the show. None of them were in there. There was nothing in the entire first section. But obviously you can improvise which paper we're going to now, Paul. But that wasn't in either. We just had a single image of the Telegraph in the background, and the first paper we were doing was the Times. So we had a single wrong image in the background. We had nothing of any paper. Then eventually they popped up on the screen. I was able to read it. And I'd been off for a bit as well. I hadn't hosted for ages, and I just didn't deal with it well at all. But there was nothing I could have done. There's nothing I could have done because...
No, I just don't know how you... What did you do? Did you just
I was just like scrolling. So I'm literally scrolling, waiting, just on live television, just looking up and down my AutoCue.
Please appear.
And then... appear. I probably was just doing... My face was probably just blank. And then eventually they brought them up on the screen and I started just reading them off the screen. The only way I slightly rescued it was I went, and those were your seamless headlines. And I thought, okay, at least you styled it out there. But they absolutely screwed me. I noticed, it's basically that Josh had, the producer thought Josh was putting him in. He thought the producer was putting him in. Interesting. It doesn't happen when Josh hosts. but it did happen. That's all I'm going to say.
Good point.
It's interesting. That's all I'm saying. I won't say. I can't say it, but I'm not going to say. Yeah. But anyway, so that's the danger of auto cues and sausages. We'll get back to that later. But I thought maybe we should start with I don't know. Yeah, let's start with reform because I'm tempted to just go straight into Labour now, but it's quite boring. So I think we should start with reform. Did you watch the reform conference or any highlights?
So I did actually. I watched a little bit of it. I've watched plenty of highlights. So highlights of Farage's speech, highlights of Lee Anderson's speech. I was actually with Lee Anderson the day before the conference. I did Lee Anderson's Real World.
Really?
It actually gets filmed in a pub in just in
no one's ever asked me to
inside
do
Essex.
that. I'm obviously not working class enough for it. Hey, Paul, come on and talk about Real World. We'll eat some pies and taste some beans.
This was actually said to me at the weekend. The producer of that show said that my interview went so well, they're going to ask some more of the headliners comedians to do it. I think they must have thought, well, we'll give him a go. He looks a bit working class, but I had some things to say. So it seemed to be okay. And I think we'd all be great at it. Basically, you stand behind a pump. He asks you a few questions about yourself or matters of the moment. And then you pull a pint and he judges you based on how well you pull the pint. I did a 6 out of 10 pint. It wasn't very good. But
what's hard about it? You just have to do it slowly and angle the glass right.
Well, yeah, I pulled a few pints in my time. It's early in the what people, I don't know if I should reveal this, but it gets recorded about 9:30 on a Thursday morning, goes out on a Friday evening.
Wow, that's way too early for me.
So the pumps haven't been used since the night before. But I don't want to blame anything. I had the angle right. It was Foster's. Had it been a proper old school pint of old Badgers Nadgers or something, it would have come out of that pump deliciously and it would have been fine. But it was the old fizzy.
Tools, Paul. What kind of craftsman are you?
I blame myself on TV, which I think was the wise thing to do.
Well, that's good. You would shoot that show, and it's good because you're still enthusiastic. I mean, I used to want to be on all these different shows, and I was on quite a few of them, but now I just do headliners, and that's enough for me. But I could do something. People have asked me to do the other ones. Maybe I should. I don't know. It's just quite after 3 years of just doing 3 a week of headliners or whatever it is, 2.5 years. It's just quite relentless. So I don't. And then with all my podcasts, I don't need to necessarily do all these extra things, but I should probably do. So not that anyone's asked me, because no one's asked me to do that.
Well, I will do now if you want to. I can recommend you as well.
People have asked me to do Saturday 5. They've asked me to do Saturday 5, and obviously I used to do a lot of Free Speech Nation, and I used to do Dolan. What else? I've done a lot of them, but then no one, Lee hasn't asked me. But I think you'd have been good at that.
I've not been asked to do Saturday 5. I've been afraid to ask because I feel like I'm too old for it. They all feel like kind of young and hip things, don't they? The rights version
used to ask
of the
me.
fonts.
I just couldn't do it at the time, but and I'm not quite as old as you, but we're basically the same. So anyway, so you're with Lee Anderson. Did you get any insights?
He talked to me a little bit about the things he might joke about. He ran a couple of things by me. But I don't know if he took any advice from me or not.
That'd be so funny if you recommended something and it tanked.
Yeah, that would have just been the worst. I didn't actually. What I did is the polite thing, which you always do when someone comes up to the comedian and says, "I'm thinking about saying this. What do you think?" Just laugh. Yeah, that'll do it. Because there's no point. What are you going to do? Get into a writing session? Just sit down while it's
that's
the timing.
Shitly, and here's why.
Yeah, you use the trick of 3 here. You've only said 2 things. No, I didn't. It was talking about the BBC, and he joked about that anyway. Within one of the highlights clips I saw earlier, he ripped up a BBC license application.
Yeah, I know. That's crowd pleasing stuff, isn't it? I mean, there was a lot of crowd pleasing. There was that kind of thing. But then there was also some, I don't know if there were strange comments. He said he talked a lot about democratising the party, Farage. He's saying they're going to have a proper process, not just be a sort of Farage autocracy. But he also said they're vetting candidates rigorously. We don't want bigots. And he said we don't care about skin colour. We couldn't care less who you are. We care whether you share the values of the country and whether you obey the law. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. I sort of wonder if that's, I mean, obviously he's not going to go in and say it's all about skin colour, but it's like, I sometimes wonder if they're playing too hard on that kind of thing, that kind of, worrying about what the normies think or the left thinks a bit too much and sort of, we don't want bigots. That's a kind of like lefty word, isn't it? Bigot. No one really takes that seriously who's normal anymore.
However, like you wrote a great Substack this week. I'm sure it's gone very well. I was reading it earlier. And his interview, I think, with Stephen Edgington, and he said in there, if he was to say something of that ilk, it would be remembered for 20, 30 years, and it would derail a lot of things. And it's all about the optics, isn't it? And Farage or not Farage, that battle does not get won on skin colour, it gets won on culture. The widest possible scope to battleground scope for that argument is British culture and what our values are. And of course, that isn't determined by skin colour. The majority of English people or British people are white. And, he's not afraid to say that, and neither should he be. But to say that you need to all be white or you'd need to act white in some way, you're going to lose that battle before you even start. So it's not worth it. In modern politics, any politics, I mean, even with the Rivers of Blood speech, that tanked, what's his name?
Enoch Powell.
That tanked Enoch Powell's chances of being Conservative leader. It tanked his political career. And, there was a lot more to Enoch Powell than that speech. So you have to tread the line carefully. You cannot be... Whether it's brave or not, you cannot be the person who's continually banging on about skin colour, because actually it's not that important. I don't think it is that important at all. We know that there are some great British people that have been of different colour, have assimilated well. It's about connecting with our culture.
Thing is, though, it's not that we want to go on about skin colour, but English is an ethnicity, and people really struggle with this. But there is a thing called English, and and everyone keeps denying it exists. We can get onto that. And people say, oh, there's no such thing as English and all this nonsense. And it is obviously a thing. We have a long and rich history. Yes, it's a mixture of Anglo-Saxon and some other influences, but Norman and Viking and so on. But of course, it's real. It's as real as anything. And there's one nation and one people where you're allowed to constantly claim they don't exist. If you do it with something else, you're called something pretty horrific. And these are basically England deniers, these people. They're denying the English deniers even. They deny our right to exist. But here's where the argument falls apart, Paul, if you just want to have no political correctness and just look at the truth. When Stephen Edgington says white British have gone down from 87% to 74% over the last 20 years, and he said, are you concerned about that to Farage? Farage said, no, I'm not concerned. Then he goes, what I am concerned about is entire areas of our country where there's no English culture. Now, let me just get the exact phrase so I can get it right. The problem with this is it completely falls apart, because it's ultimately the same thing is what I'm going to say, because you can't have England without English people. So let me just get exactly what he said and why it didn't make sense. Farage said, no, he's not concerned. He talked about the population explosion, which he loves talking about. We have to build a new home every 2 minutes. Then he said, look, I'm very concerned that we have whole areas of our towns and cities that are unrecognisable as being English, but they're not being unrecognisable as being English because of skin colour. They're unrecognisable because of culture. And my point is not that I'm obsessed with skin colour. My point is just the same thing, because if England was 100% Japanese, who doesn't love the Japanese? Great culture, great people, great food. But the food would be sushi, the religion would be Shinto or Buddhism, and the country would be basically a second Japan. It would be called Little Japan or something, right? It would be slightly colder, wetter, sadder Japanese people. It wouldn't be England. So therefore, that proves there is a level where too many people coming in changes the country to something completely different. So then what is that level becomes the question. Probably it's a majority of one of the original people. But what immigration control is doing that. It's just not calling it that. You're limiting immigration. Why are you doing it? Some people say it's to slow the process down because it's too fast to assimilate change. I've always found that a bit silly, because it's like, okay, we want to destroy the country but slow it. I've always found that strange. But you're slowing the process down, but you're also limiting the amount that the country can be changed in its character. So it's the same thing. Of course, it's not as aggressive as remigrating people. It doesn't sound as kind of fascist as that. But it's essentially the same thing. You're trying to say, well, we have to limit this. And obviously it's because of public services as well and so on. But isn't it also because if you replace the entire people, the culture would be different? If you accept that 100% Japanese people in England would not be England, then you must be saying that English people are the key at some point. Now, Farage wants to say they're not, but in the next sentence he's saying they are, but he's just using a different word. He's using the word culture. But what's the difference?
Oh, a really interesting point. It is the catch-22 of modern politics, isn't it? The fact that skin colour has become so taboo that you can't say... It's a bit like saying...
Well, it's not even skin colour, because it's not Swedish people. We had 100% Swedish people. We'd be Sweden, then they'd look at each other and they'd say, we've got really good English, but actually let's just start speaking Swedish. And soon it wouldn't... And then we'd have like all the women would be blonde and ABBA would be playing, but it wouldn't be England. So it's not even skin color. It's English is a thing. When I was in Guatemala, I was like, oh, there's an English guy. We're recognizable and we have a long and
Yeah.
rich history, despite what many people on Twitter will tell you. So therefore, you just go, hang on, isn't it important to keep that England has to have English people? Because why would Swedish or Japanese people maintain English culture? They wouldn't.
No, and it's all part of this Nigel Farage legitimising Reform UK.
Well, clearly.
He's made it a political party now. It's no longer a business. The members can vote on policy, they vote against policy, etc., etc. He's legitimising it, and a legitimate political party in 2024 has to find unique and innovative ways of overcoming the colour inherent within the immigration issue. Because you're absolutely right. If you were to park all the nonsense to one side and say to a small child, particularly if they've been brought up in the 80s, but even now, I'd imagine, point the English person out, they're likely to point out the white bloke or the white woman or the white child. They're very likely to do that. And that's because that is how we are instantly recognisable. The next level of that would be, the way they behave, the way they speak, the way they sound, etc., etc. And those are just facts. They're not things that we should be overly concerned about. But what Nigel Farage and anyone who's governing the UK needs to be able to do is include everyone. So it's like proper inclusivity, not inclusivity of outcome. So you can make political points and win favour. Like endless Labour MPs we could name, and some Tory MPs as well. Some Tory MPs from the centre to the centre left of the Tory party would have exactly the same argument. But Nigel Farage cannot do that. If he does do that, because of who he is, he's going to lose some of the centre ground he needs to take with him. Some of the centre right ground he needs to take with him. So maybe he's got to have someone else within his party that's doing that. And there are straight-speaking people within UK Reform. And Reform UK, needs to become this legitimate party by having people like Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe, Lee Anderson, a man of the people. Lee Anderson's mistakenly seen as someone who's a bit dim, passionately dim in some way. That's not my experience, Lee Anderson. That's the arrogance, I think, of certain aspects of the left. Sure, he's not, North London intelligentsia, and he didn't have the same education as many of the top politicians around the country, but the education he did get is very similar to the people that he's representing, and he's able to articulate their views very well. I mean, I did say to him when I met him, I don't know if he understands, I don't know if he forgets which colour tie he has to put on in the morning, because he has represented every major political party in the UK, with the exception of the Lib Dems. But that's probably because he doesn't know all the words to ABBA songs. I don't know if you saw the conference, the Lib Dem conference. What's his name? The leader. I forget his name. I'm forgetting people's names. Yeah, Davey was singing along, I think, to Dancing Queen or something like that.
Unfortunately,
it's for your listeners and viewers. It's worth a watch just for the cringe factor. And as we're on the subject, we've had everything but the Tory conference now. Lib Dems was just again. It continued from Ed Davies' campaign. It was all larking about and dancing and singing, looking slightly awkward. But there's such a void in opposition that they can do whatever they like now. He's quadrupled his seat numbers just by fannying around,
just like going down water slides. Yeah. Well, look.
Go on.
No, I hate to press you, but because I don't want to press you and get you in trouble, Paul. I just struggle. I'm at the point in my life where I just can't deal with nonsense. I'm just like. I'm not obsessed with skin colour, but clearly you can't have England without English people. It's just nonsense. And if you just say Farage is my problem with Farage in this interview, I understand politically why he has to do all this. It just bothers me because it becomes bizarre. So when it comes to mass deportations, right? So Stephen Edgerton, the brilliance of Stephen, and he's been on our show. Go to nickdixon.net for the full episode with him, where he talks about how he nearly went to jail because the police investigated him completely.
Great episode.
It was crazy. Oh, thank you. But He's great, Steve, but he's one of the few people that's going to grill Farage from the right, and he did it to Liz Truss, and she got very uncomfortable. Whereas most politicians are going to say, Farage, why are you so awful and racist? And he's going to go, here's what I'm not, and he's going to win because he's dealt with that 1,000 times. Whereas Edgerton got him actually uncomfortable, and he said things like on mass deportation, he said it was a political impossibility. He says, I'm not going to get dragged down the route of mass deportations or anything like that. I think it's pretty clear there are a lot of people that have come who should not be given leave to remain. It's a heck of a job. It's a heck of a job. So what he ended up saying was he's not going to talk about mass deportations. It's clear there's lots of people here that should go back, but it's politically impossible, and I'm not going to mention it, except that I am mentioning it just to say I'm not mentioning it. And I said in the piece, it just reminded me of Norm Macdonald, because he says, if I support mass deportation, that's all anyone will talk about for the next 20 years, which is right. So it reminded me of Norm Macdonald, where he says, I'm a deeply closeted homosexual. And he's like, oh, so you're gay? He's like, hey, buddy, easy now. He's like, well, there's like Larry King interview. He goes, so you're very gay, but you just don't want anyone to admit it. He's like, why would I say that? I'm deeply closeted. And he's like, so he won't say he's gay. So Farage is saying, we can't, of course, mass deportations, we can't talk about that. It's a political impossibility. Of course, there's lots of people that need to go back, and then you couldn't get it done. And I'm not talking about it, but obviously you need to do it. But I couldn't do it, and it can't be done, but we need to do it. It's like, what are you saying? So he ends up talking nonsense because he's trying to hold the Ming vase. And as I said in the piece, it's what Starmer was doing prior to the election. Farage is now doing a version of this. He's on the defensive, thinking Starmer's making such a balls up of this. If I just hang on in there, I can be the moderate right-wing candidate who's not crazy, who's very moderate, and just hold on to it. And I've got the sort of skills, I'm in place. And I don't blame him for doing this. The problem becomes, what is the offer then? Is it just, oh, net zero's rubbish, we're ripping up a BBC license? What am I actually getting from, if they can't actually get rid of people who shouldn't be in the country, and we can't talk about immigration much, or maybe we can to a degree, what is it I'm getting from them? If you become so watered down to get your message across, are you going to become tough once you get in power? And then the funny thing was, Jenrick, and you don't have to, of course, we're not going to believe the Tories easily again, but Jenrick sounded more clear on this topic than Farage, saying that we have an English identity and things like this, and we know he's got a serious immigration plan. Then he got grilled on English identity and also kind of fluffed it. But the danger is that Jenrick can actually threaten Farage from the right, at least in his rhetoric.
He can. I think if and I've been impressed with the way that he's conducted himself in this ongoing leadership debate for the Tory party. But whether he wins or doesn't win, whoever becomes leader of the Tory party, obviously is famously now going to be presiding over a party that has done absolutely nothing about absolutely everything for a very long time. So they've been very good at identifying the problems, but they've done absolutely nothing about them. We've taken no advantage of Brexit, whether you voted for Brexit or not. It presented an opportunity. These things always do, and we've taken none of those opportunities whatsoever. We have known for quite some time now that immigration, legal immigration, let's forget illegal immigration for a moment because that's a drop in the ocean, but legal immigration is well out of hand. Net 750,000 people in 2023. That is remarkable. That's the legal stuff. So you're talking at least 1 million people just flooding into the country. And what are we going to do? Because we can't cope as we are. The infrastructure is just not set up for it. With regards to going back to the skin colour thing, absolutely. You've probably got. I mean, I was about to argue there should probably bring science into this, and sort of say, what are the scientific facts about English identity? But of course, science means nothing anymore because of the gender debate. So if you were to thrust that into the political limelight and say, well, we're going to argue this on science, somebody would debunk that on the basis that they don't identify that way, or culture is a feeling, etc., etc. All the things that are very difficult to debate because it's like knitting clouds. It means you can't achieve anything. So he's on a sticky wicket. He really is, because he can't go full BNP. And he can't appease or placate the people that would like him to either. But what he's got to do is, I think, win the intellectual battle, which he can do with logic. And he can do by pointing out all the things that you said. Perhaps you should be an advisor to Nigel Farage, Nick. But pointing out the fact that you have to be able to identify something to argue for it. So go on then, identify English identity, and in the same way they're trying to, spending a lot of time trying to identify what Islamophobia is. Why don't we spend some of that time identifying what being English means? And if anyone can do that, it's Nigel Farage and Reform, and it's something we should accept. I think there's a real arrogance around left-leaning politicians, or the left in general, around Englishness. They've gotten away with it forever. They've gotten away with saying English is bad. English is bad. And it's a real arrogance because they feel very safe in saying that. They don't have to back it up in any way. They just go things like, the riots or football hooliganism or the flag. Like the flag only represents people chucking bricks and drinking beer on the terraces. That's not what it represents. It can represent far more than that. It just happens to have been misused in some cases. But I think we should spend some time identifying what that is and then fight the battle from that corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange quirk of Englishness. I mean, Orwell talked about it with the English intellectuals and this self-hatred. France doesn't have it. I mean, they can be lefties, but they still, France is important, the French language. We have it. It's very strange. Germany has it, and to an extent, they have guilt about the war, but they don't. Nowhere really has this to the same extent that we have. It's very, very odd. And there's this denial of that English does exist. Adil Ray wrote, Robert Jenrick thinks English identity is under threat. Our language is Germanic. Our numbers are Arabic and Indian. Our patron saint is Palestinian. Our royal family has German ancestry. And the church originates from the Middle East. I mean, apart from that. And it's like, okay, you've done the cake.
That's what I'm talking about.
He's claiming that the cake has every ingredients, so the cake doesn't exist. But it's like, yes, Anglo-Saxon. Saxony is a state in Germany. It's like, yes, it's a mixture of Angles, the Angland, and then Saxony. It's like, yeah, we're a mixture of those things. Part of our identity is Germanic. I mean, look at me with my hair that used to be blonde. But I mean, where part of us is Germanic and part of us might be Norman and Viking. But that's part of our long, rich history, and it doesn't mean that's what it means to be English. It doesn't mean they think it means this sort of nebulous thing that's like, I see, it doesn't exist because of all these things. Like, no, you just describe what it means. That's fine. But that doesn't mean you get to ultimate. That doesn't mean you get to just tear it apart forever, and it can be interchangeable. Because this is developed over a long period of time organically, so you can't just destroy it instantly and say, see, English means nothing. No, English means the long, rich history to which you've just alluded.
Exactly. And this is what I'm talking about, the arrogance of the left, and this whole argument always perpetuates. What they've done there is identify a bunch of different identities from around the globe and said, look, English is as multicultural as the world is multicultural. That's not the point, and it's not the argument either. The argument is about the culture and behaviours that have permeated over centuries within this country since all of those things happened, by the way. Long time, 1,000 years plus, and it's being eroded. And you wouldn't do that. It would be disrespectful to do that of almost any other nation on earth. If a politician on almost any other, the only place I can think that is quite similar is probably Australia, because the left in Australia are absolutely obsessed. With the Aboriginal heritage of Australia. And, to the point that I think Leo was saying, and other comics have said that, they're giving sort of thanks in comedy clubs to the Aboriginal ancestors for the land on which they're about to perform, etc., etc. Yes, okay, we accept those things, but that doesn't change the culture in 2024. What sets the culture in 2024 is all the things that have taken place since that point. And there was, for a very long time in Britain, let's for the argument's sake, say England, there was a culture that was developed. I think David Starkey said recently in a podcast I was listening to that in his youth, Great Britain had reached the most sort of peaceful sort of culture that had ever existed in our history, and we've very quickly eroded it since that time. And I assume he's talking about the 50s and 60s, and perhaps just after the war was when Englishness may have peaked. And what happened just after the war is multiculturalism. Now, you can't if you want to win a political argument, you can't go blaming multiculturalism. But what you have to say is, what do we do to protect that Englishness that was built up. Because what happened after the war is, yes, we won the war, but essentially we lost our empire. We were devastated as a country. There was no money. People were still on ration books until 1955, which, for everybody who's listening to this knows, is 10 years after the war. There were bomb sites all over the place. We didn't start rebuilding to the 60s. And then we built these horrific dystopian buildings all made of concrete, in which we moved in lots and lots of immigration to help us rebuild the country. And we kind of threw away at that point our culture. We should have done a lot to protect it, and we did absolutely nothing to protect it. And the reason we did nothing to protect it is because those people who were in charge knew that that was going to be the case. So if you started saying, we need to protect this, they wouldn't have been able to achieve any of their goals. So we are where we are, and I think there is a very good... But I say that, and I was going to go on to another argument, but I say that knowing that there is still Welsh culture, there is still Irish culture, and there's still Scottish culture. And they're very proud of them. And we even celebrate their days. You're more likely to remember what St Andrew's Day for Wales is than you are St George's Day for England, for instance. And you'll definitely know when St Patrick's Day is. St Andrew's Day is Scottish.
Yeah. I was going to say, I didn't want to... do you know what?
I can just feel everyone.
On that point... Jenrick acknowledged that in the article, his article in the Mail, which has been controversial because people are idiots, but he was saying we should be proud to be English, not just, everyone else is, as we know, Scotland, Wales, they're all proud, we're not allowed to be proud. It's the one identity that's not allowed to be proud, which is bizarre. Yeah, Michael Rosen replied to that Addo Ray tweet I just read. He said, there was an English identity, King Alfred times, then it became a Norman French English identity, then Norman French England conquered Wales, later cemented by the Anglo-Welsh Tudors whose cousin brought in Scotland. Oh, I missed out the conquest of Ireland, sorry. So yeah, it's mixed. I understand this, Michael, it's not absolutely simple, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This other guy wrote, above all, evolutionary biologists believe that all human mitochondrial DNA can be traced back to a single woman known as mitochondrial Eve, who lived in Africa 100,000 or 200,000 years ago. It's like, well, yeah, okay, thanks, mate. If you're really going to go there, yes, okay. We were all a sperm or whatever. I mean, it's just like then nothing exists. They have to do this with Englishness. They have to just claim nothing exists. Okay, then the Aboriginals don't exist. Okay, no one exists. Then the American Indians don't exist. No one exists. Cool. We're all just one blob. I mean, different cultures and countries exist, and that's fine. And everyone acknowledges it's fine, except for us. And I'm just sick of it. I'm totally over it. I like the fact now maybe Japan are too hostile. You can decide, but I like the fact that they protect their own culture. As you say, lots of people have assimilated well, and lots of people do. So then, you just say, well, what is the level of immigration? And everyone knows this when they talk about level of immigration, that if it's too much, the country is destroyed. So it needs to be. One assumes, therefore, it's better for it to be largely English people, and then some other people who get the culture. I think everyone sort of acknowledges that, but when it's phrased in the wrong way, it sounds bad. It's all about how it sounds, but that is the essence of what we're saying. And interestingly, on that, just because you mentioned Powell, yeah, he was mentioned in the Edgerton interview, and Farage's response was intellectually an extraordinary man, which everyone knows. Of course, he spoke 13 languages or something, an incredible high IQ person, but Farage said, maybe not a very good politician, maybe not a very politician at all. And I've never heard him say anything like that because he knew Powell when he was alive. He's praised him a lot. So that was quite damning. And he said he was in a hurry. He made a speech that was unwise and it lived with him for the rest of his career. Well, lots of people agree with that part. But he said he was in a hurry. So to me, it was just Farage revealing his own strategy. He's like, I've not been in a hurry. And he's been around chipping away for years and years and decades. I'm not going to mess it up now. I'm not going to be as stupid as Powell. And I'm not going to let you get any easy sort of headlines off me. And I'm just going to kind of play defensive until I can get into maybe be PM, or at least the main opposition, by Starmer and the Tories just ballsing it up. And that seems to be what he's saying there. He's saying, I don't want to do a Powell. But it's kind of weird because he's acknowledging that he's saying I can't use that rhetoric, but he's admitting that. He's not just saying, I don't know what you're talking about, shut up, or Powell was evil. He's saying, I'm not going to be as stupid as Powell, but I'm going to tell you that live. Isn't it a kind of a strange it's kind of strange card trick in a way?
It's the paradox he finds himself in now. I'm not sure what else he can do. Obviously, there are lots of things he can do, but looking at the bigger picture and needing to win those political battles, he knows that your ship gets very quickly sunk if you make one error of judgment, one error of saying. Particularly about matters of race and culture. And he, by the way, everybody who doesn't want him to succeed paints him as some bigoted racist. who's lucky to have got where he was. And he's done so on the stupidity of his followers, by the way, according to them. So he has to play the game. And maybe the more powerful Reform get, the more seats they get, that will validate some of the things that he's said, and he'll either continue in the same vein or he'll feel that he can be a little bit braver.
Yeah,
and maybe say the things that he's thinking.
If he is sort of not saying, I mean, because another argument is that he is just a boomer. This is just who he is. It's just how he sees things. And there's nothing wrong with the colourblind meritocracy. We all like that in the 90s. We're just at a different stage now where immigration is so out of control, the country's so out of control that it needs something a bit different. But sure, I mean, there's nothing wrong with what he's saying on the face of it. We're probably at a stage where it hasn't worked, has it? Liberalism, meritocracy, it's all nice. I prefer it to what we have now, which is wokeness, but it's not maybe going to be enough now. It's kind of like Trump. I still say absolutely vote Trump if you're American, but there's different Trumps. One is the Elon Musk version where it's like high skilled immigration, free speech, great. We try and go back to the 90s. Still way better than Kamala Harris, absolutely. But there's another Trump, which is like, okay, I've got JD Vance on board. JD Vance is friends with people like Curtis Yarvin. He's aware of some of the new right arguments. He's aware, for example, of elite theory and the idea that personnel is policy. So I just need to gut the whole deep state and just get rid of them all and replace them with different people. And it's a more radical version of Trump. That would be interesting to see. I don't know if we'll see it. But still, this liberal Farage, yeah, it's fine. It's better than what we have now. But you sort of go, what will it be? I mean, because they're not proven on policy, they're not proven on being serious about logistics and getting things done. In that way, you might say Jenrick's more likely to do it. He's an intellectual guy. He's got a serious plan on immigration. So if Farage is just going to offer ripping up, TV licenses and saying we're not bigots, we're great, it's like, okay, but what does this mean? I don't know. Maybe you could see people going back to someone like Jenrick. If it's Kemi, I don't see it because I think she's just an anti-woke liberal. If it's anyone else, I don't see it. But if it's Jenrick who actually does get this stuff, it seems. Then again, of course, you get tricked by the Tories and never again sort of thing. But I voted Reform, so I'm not necessarily. I don't know. I'm not. I mean, I'm a Reform voter, so it is sort of like you are sort of. It is a danger of losing my vote with too much shenanigans. So I understand the political game as well.
I think the solution is an amalgamation of the Tories and Reform, and it won't happen. It won't happen for a couple of reasons. And the reason I think is a solution, listen to anyone who doesn't want that to happen. They'll say,
well, yeah, it splits the vote. It's the only way the right wins.
Exactly, but if they came to, my point is, if instead of splitting the vote, those two parties came together, or certain aspects of those two parties come together, someone like Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves or Angela Rayner, if they're talking about the leadership battle, one of their main attack lines will be who's cozied up to Farage, because what they want you to think is that Farage is this big bad guy. What they know for sure, that if Farage and Jenrick or someone like that, or Kemi Badenoch and Farage, I think it could only probably be Jenrick, and I don't even know what his view is on that.
Well, Jenrick has said that he wants to retire Farage and make him obsolete by, bringing back those people. And Kemi has said Reform voters are our people, but they both distance themselves from Farage because he wants to destroy the Tories. Farage has been less generous. He's just said they're nobodies. He's like, they're nobodies. Who are these? I mean, the whole leadership contest, like, who are these people? They're nobodies. Never heard of them. So he's just saying, like, I'm the real opposition now. He's just kind of alphaing it, like, you people are nothing. But yeah, they have to figure out how to. That will, because otherwise we can just get Starmer, because we continue to get the horrors of Labour because it splits the vote.
It's never happening, by the way. It's just never happening. The whole Farage join the Tories, etc., etc. None of that is happening in the near future, at least. He said the Tories are dead. His plan relies on the Tories being dead, and the Tories are saying they want to kill Farage, metaphorically want to kill Farage, and because they need Farage out the picture in order for them to succeed. So they've got this issue at the moment where they, all the time that both exist, neither are going to succeed. It feels like the greatest chance of succession is probably from the Reform and Farage side, because they can generate one thing. If you watch the conferences like we have done, you can see that there's an energy about the Reform conference that isn't anywhere else. There is no energy at the Labour conference. There's lots of platitudes and word salads and horse shit. But what there isn't is a real consensus. None of the unions agree. None of the unions agree with Starmer. None of them like Rachel Reeves. Angela Rayner's just prancing around in clothes that have been bought for her and just loving it because she's got her own personal photographer. Keir Starmer says sausages when he means hostages. Rachel Reeves is made of metal and silicon and computer chips. There isn't a cohesiveness there, but there is about the Reform Party. They all believe in one thing and they're all going together. Now, they've got to improve and they've got to unite and they've got to be legitimate, but I can see that happening. And the Tories, they're dead in the water at the moment. There's been no opposition. Has there been a worse start to a leadership than Keir Starmer's start to being a Prime Minister of the UK? I don't think so. And I try to sort of say, of course, I don't like him. I know you don't like him either. I don't like him. But however, if he'd come on the scene like Tony Blair did and bamboozled us all, I might have been reluctantly sort of appreciative of what he'd managed to achieve. But Keir Starmer has achieved nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's made things worse. We were bad, already bad, and now it's worse. So it is ripe for change. It's just how it can be achieved. And the Lib Dems, and this is why the Lib Dems are doing so well, because there is room for people who just go down log flumes and do star jumps singing to ABBA. That is where we are at the moment.
I'd completely forgotten about the Lib Dems. I always forget about them. But yeah, you said a lot of correct things there. It has been a terrible start for Starmer. He's going to get away with it because of the mess on the right. I think ideally on the right, you'd have Farage as charismatic leader, serious people like Jenrick behind him coming up with policy. I understand reformers saying we professionalised. It's not as if they've had no turmoil because they've had Ben Habib, who they sort of seem to have fallen out with. It seems to be complicated behind the scenes. He's also been a guest, by the way. Go to nickdixon.net for the full episode. But yeah, they have to sort that out. You're saying the energy is with reform. It certainly seems to be in terms of the size of the conference and the energy. Tories still have a lot more seats. They're the established party.
Yeah.
Someone like Jenrick could get them back on track. So I'm not totally convinced at the moment. I'm not sure. I mean, what
are we going to get from the Tory conference other than a perpetuation of the leadership race, though?
No, well,
we don't know what they stand for. Rishi Sunak is a lame duck.
Well, the leadership wasn't even going to be able to stand. They weren't even going to be able to talk. Whether they've had to bargain to be able to speak for longer. The leadership candidate, they were going to get 10 minutes or something absurd. So there's almost a feeling that the mainstream party is embarrassed about most of the leadership contest, and especially Kerry and Jenrick.
I think reform, was it to take off in some significant way, you end up with a number of established Tory MPs joining reform. That's what you end up with. Or you certainly end up with the policymakers that sit in the dark corners of these places coming up with strategy and policy. They join reform as well because we haven't really tested reform yet in terms of policy. We know what their policy is roughly on immigration. We know what their policy is on managing some of the traditional structures of the UK. But when it comes to education or the NHS or all the things that actually are going to win you massive amounts of votes, we don't really know much about them. And I know I sound like a critic there, but as someone who does support them, I'd like to hear what they have to say on these matters. And when they do say them, they're going to have to say it with, some gravitas.
Yeah,
and that comes from these dastardly people behind the scenes.
They need, the bods, the spads. They need those people. So, what about Labour then? Since we've done loads on that Labour conference, as you said, Rayner's £68,000 photographer. We'll get onto some of that. Maybe Bridget Phillipson got 14,000, but just before that, for a 40th birthday party, I went for a pizza. But Starmer, the main points of his speech, he said loads of things. He just throws everything at it, doesn't he? They're going to fix everything. Government of service, which is total bollocks. Doctors are back. We've got solar going. We've got offshore wind. No one wants. Great British Energy. Ed Miliband is an idiot. Border security. Renters reform. No fault evictions. Got a massive clap, which just shows what idiots you're dealing with. It's an absolutely awful idea. You're not allowed to get rid of the people from your own house. What if they're dicks? Railways back into public ownership. Fair enough if it happens. Knife crime. Really, that's about the people and sorting immigration. But anyway, probably a lot of it. Living wage. All right. Industrial strategy. 10-year NHS plan. Devolution. Bad. Workers' rights. The idiots clap that again. Probably is a bad thing. Teachers, police, public services, all the usual stuff. Ceasefire in Gaza got a massive clap because obviously they all hate Israel. And that's when he said sausages. Although it's funny, he's obsessed with ceasefire there, but he's been going around to America trying to get war with Russia to kick off, and Biden's had to tell him to get stuff. So he said, many of the decisions we will make will be unpopular. Well, he nailed it there. But he said, and then he doubled down on, I'll never let a minority of violent racist thugs terrorize our communities, which we know what the code word our communities means immigrant communities, and especially certain religions we won't get into. So he's basically saying the usual thing there. We won't let naughty English people, they're second-class citizens, two-tier Keir. The only good bit for me was the heckle put down. Someone was shouting, I couldn't hear what they were shouting about, but he goes, he's got a ticket from the 2019 conference. And that was like quite a good, it was a relatively good heckle put. I got a big laugh, and it because he was some nut job Corbyn type. And then he added, we've changed the party, which was silly. But people have called it grey Labour. I think that's the term, isn't it? Because you think, what does Starmer stand for? Is it, it's grey Labour? There's that thing they want to get a pint down to 2/3 of a pint. They want pubs to shut earlier. It came out the other day. Potentially have pubs. How much earlier could pubs shut? I've been around the world, like Lisa Stansfield, Paul, and I not only can I not find my baby, I can't find a place that has earlier closing pubs than England. I mean, I don't even drink these days really much at all. I used to drink a lot more. You could never find anywhere that was open. Even Scotland opens later. And if you want to find a late bar in our nation's illustrious capital, one of the major cities in the world, it's easier to win the Crystal Maze. The bit at the end with all the tickets, it's like you can't find a bar open until past 11:30. But they wanted to make it shut even earlier. When could they? Is it sundown? Is it dusk? When is it? When is it, Starmer? It's absolute insanity. So it's just like the killjoy policies of Labour. And then there was Rachel Reeves being a robot. I've got 6,000 likes for saying I've never seen a human move or talk like that. She's this weird thing where I'm going into Starmer again, but she's smiling the whole time. And like her mouth is moving. If you watch it on mute, her mouth, it's really weird. It looks like it's being pulled by little wires, or she's trying to eat a massive club sandwich, or she's explaining something to a toddler, or she's like one of those Bruce Lee Kung Fu
dolls.
movies where they're moving and then the speaking's coming separately. It's like, oh, I will destroy you. It's like, who moves their face like that? Do you remember when... I'll stop ranting in a minute because it's been way too much for me today. I've been off for a while. Remember when Gordon Brown used to try and smile? And it was like...
Yeah. He used to do this intake of breath thing as well that was always a bit weird.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then he tried to smile. And it looked like when you come back from holiday and your dog's pleased to see you, and it tries to smile, you feel like it's trying to smile, but it can't because it hasn't got the muscles. And it just kind of... You ever seen it? And it kind of like just does a weird snarl. That's what our dog used to do. Gordon Brown can't smile, neither can Rachel Reeves. Where are they getting these robots from?
Well, it lends itself to the David Icke, lizard people conspiracy, doesn't it, really? Because there's a disproportionately large amount of odd people at the top of politics across the world. Where do you see these people? I've never met a Rachel Reeves. I've never met a Keir Starmer.
Yeah, they don't exist. Who are these? I've never seen that many hair bobs in my life. Bridget Phillipson. Does the hair bob just lower like Darth Vader's helmet onto their head? They just enter Labour, they like conveyor belt, and then you know what I mean? Like the Lego hair just plops onto their head. Then they say economic growth.
And is there anyone in the country now who doesn't wish they were friends with Lord Ali, whoever he is? I have no idea who this fella is. But what he does is he makes every day Christmas for anyone he supports politically. It's got ridiculous. I mean, the amount of times he's attached to these gifts.
I know.
Just 14K. What was her name? Oh, Bridget Phillipson. Someone I'd never even heard of. Turned 40, got 14K's worth of gifts. From Lord Ali.
I went to Pizza Express with 3 people. She said that she also went for a pizza on her private one, but this was her public birthday where she invited all kinds of donors and everything. It's like, don't you see how awful you sound, given that you've gone on about cronyism? None of them have a leg to stand on. They just don't get it at all, do they? And then James O'Brien twisted himself in knots with his sophistry, trying to justify it. He goes, am I the people that am I the kind of people that I'm calling out? And yes, James, yes. And you figured it out. You're a hypocrite because your people are now in. You're applying different rules, but he claims he's not because no laws are broken and it's not the same. Blah, blah, blah. It's exactly the same. To the average voter, they're just seeing the same kind of corruption, the same cronyism, and they're seeing hypocrisy. Aaron Bastani, obviously a lefty, said something strange is happening. Virtually everyone you talk to at Labour conference, delegates from left or right included, think Starmer has blown his first 100 days. Some openly say he won't stay until 2029, but cabinet MPs really can't see it. And it's true, you see Streeting interviewed, you see Phillipson, you see Reeves, and they just seem to have no awareness of how bad they sound.
there is something about Wes Streeting that says to me he fancies himself as the next Prime Minister.
Oh, totally.
It's just something about the way he talks about his policies with regards to the NHS, etc., etc. But he says it in a kind of sort of prime ministerial way, as if he's giving a little wink and a nod to us, going, "Don't worry, old Knob Chops is really messing this up, and I'll be in sooner or later."
He's Blair's probably texting him saying, "Are you ready?"
Yeah,
you are
probably
next.
A little tap on the shoulder, kiss on the cheek. He is somebody who has shown some common sense with regards to the gender ideology issue, particularly with regards to puberty blockers, etc., etc. So there is an element to him.
Streeting? Well, he changed his mind, didn't he? He didn't used to say that. He used to scoff and laugh at it in the comments.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, he's not to be believed. He just happens to have done something that was slightly sensible of Labour.
He figured out where the wind was blowing on
wherever
it.
They said.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was right to as well, because puberty blockers are the devil's tablets, aren't they? Really, I mean, there's no evidence. Anyway, we could get into the Cass report. I could turn into Andrew Doyle without any of the vocabulary, but I won't. People like him are doing some great work on this, and if you want to really be educated, listen to him. But Wes Streeting's an interesting person. Angela Rayner is having the time of her life. Literally, this is like it's like it's her birthday every day.
Yeah.
She's got Lord Ali's credit card. She's wandering around being photographed all over the place. She gets to walk hand in hand with the Prime Minister because of the way the Labour Party's set up. She's voted in as essentially head of the party from the membership's perspective. And for whatever reason can't put a foot wrong, but never really says anything that makes any sense. like I understand all the words. But when she puts them together, I'm like, what?
Because she says it have been an abstract failure. What don't you understand about that, Paul? They're a failure at abstract art. It's clear.
Exactly. But I don't think she knows what she means by that.
Figurative paintings, but they're an abstract fit. Yeah, mental.
She spent 14 years calling Tories scum.
But you know what?
And then acted exactly the same way.
All that said, she's still the relatively likeable one, even with the photographer somehow. Yeah. When you're next to Bridget Phillipson and Rachel Reeves and Wes Streeting, you're the only one that's not a robot. She can almost win just on that. But you're right. I mean, if she got away with the house thing, she's got away with... Yeah, I haven't really seen her at the conference. I've not really seen what she's been up to. She's just sort of... Because she said she's been sidelined. I've read articles where she's kind of sidelined by the party. And I was going to ask one more thing about Labour. I can't remember it. I'll remember it in a sec. Any other take on the Labour conference while I remember it? Oh, yeah, I remembered it. Why are Labour like this? To me, it's because, one, they don't believe in anything. They just believe in power. They're the left. They just believe in power. They want to grab power. And they've read Tony Blair's books on this, and he's got a new book on it. It's all about just getting power. It's all Machiavellian. And if you believe elite theory, that's correct. You just have to get power and crush your enemies. They believe in power alone. They've had an easy ride from the media for years. All the major institutions are on their side. The left run the culture. So why wouldn't they think, yeah, I can have 14,000 off that guy. Yeah, I can have Taylor Swift tickets. They can do what they want. But as Dominic Cummings said, there's a lack of red meat for the reptiles, for the media. So now the media is turning on them because this is what the media does. It's a chaos machine. It's a machine designed to destroy the West and everything it touches. So it's designed to destroy. So they go, yeah, let's now destroy. It's like the Incredible Hulk. It's like Hulk now smashed Labour. You know what I mean? They're going to go for them if they don't have a compelling narrative.
All left-leaning, satirical comics that have made their living for the last 10 years of ripping into Tories are now starting to very quickly have a look at the things that they're saying about Labour, because the wind is not blowing in their favour. If they stuck to their sort of, aren't the Tories still bad, it doesn't work. Where are the Tories? We have absolutely no idea. Rishi Sunak is, somewhere, but no one's too sure where. Watching Southampton play, it looks like. But there is no opposition. Reform are having a jolly good time. Lib Dems are having the time of their lives. Labour are getting away with murder.
You're right.
Where does it?
Sorry.
Go on.
No, I was going to say you're right.
No, go on.
I'm talking too much, but you're right that Pye and people like Pye and Vorderman, and I know Vorderman's not a comedian, I don't know what she is, and Pye's an actor, but they've recently said, oh, winter fuel payment's bad, and even they've gone, oh, whoops, this Labour government is not, we're going to look bad now. We have to say something.
Well, I have to, because they're doing exactly the same thing that they criticise the Tories for. But not only are they doing it, they're not doing it in any way, in any intelligent way whatsoever, and they are targeting the most vulnerable people in society. So they're going straight for the elderly
Yeah.
or the poor.
It's
And it's like, you're the Labour Party. What are you doing?
It does seem incredibly unpopular. We just had this piece in the Telegraph, Winter Fuel Revolt, and it says Keir Starmer's been dealt a humiliating blow on the final day of the Labour Party conference as delegates voted to oppose the government's winter fuel raid. The revolt, led by trade unions, will pile pressure on the Chancellor to reverse the cut affecting millions of pensioners. It's a non-binding vote, so the government is not obliged to change policy, but they're seeing it as an embarrassment. So that's interesting as well. So, of course, the union's against it. Basically, everyone's against the winter fuel policy, but Starmer, he can't change course. He's a shark. He only goes one way. So, we will destroy the pensioners. We've said this. So now he has to stick with it.
Yeah, and like you say, the Unite Union, Sharon Graham, who leads that, and she at party just today, or yesterday, she made a barnstorming speech about how it's wrong. The delegates at the conference all voted against the winter fuel reforms. It's non-binding, so they're not going to be able to do anything about it, because Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have stood up and said words like "no turning, no change, service, service, service." Where's Lord Ali? I need new shoes. So I mean, I really don't know what they're going to be able to do now. It would be a massive U-turn, but I think it no matter right. So the shameful thing about this is just going to take one death in December or January of one elderly person who froze to death or got tuberculosis or whatever, pneumonia, because they just were unable to heat their home in the way they should have been able to. And that policy will become one of the worst policies in modern British political history. Straight away. It'll be up there with the poll tax before you know it. And of course, there will be, unfortunately, hundreds of deaths associated to something that's linked to people being cold or not being fed or whatever it might be. Because that's the nature of being old and being poor, unfortunately. So this is doomed to failure in the worst possible way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It reminds me of the bedroom tax for the Tories. Just an unpopular idea. It doesn't even matter. I mean, if it's means tested, I mean, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. I don't even know really, but it doesn't matter because it sounds so bad that it's just a non-starter politically. I'm surprised they can't see that. I mean, Starmer can't change. It's all about strength and unpopular decisions early, but it's just the wrong unpopular decision. It's not really a long-term growth decision to just kill a few pensioners. It's not like, we're doing this with interest rates or something because we have to. It's just a terrible policy. And as you say, if people die, it's over. How many pensioners could Lord Ali save? That's an interesting question. They'll just look at what Bridget Phillipson's been given to go to Taylor Swift or have a birthday party. Look at what Angela Rayner's photographer costs, and they'll just calculate how many pensioners because this have saved. You know what I mean?
Well, this is it. And, what they're saving, 1.4 billion, but they're impacting something like 10 million pensioners. Anyone who earns over £13,000
right
a year for pensions and any other income, which, let's face it, there might be people out there watching this that don't earn any more than that. It's still not a lot of money in 2024. That's, £1,000 a month. It doesn't get you very far at all. And that's below, that's on the poverty line, if not below it, in today's economical environment. So
why can't they just set it higher? I've not looked into the policy in detail. Why can't they? Because we all know there's boomers who are sitting on massive piles of gold and screwing the subsequent generations. But what about the poor people? What about like the ones on 13,000? Why is it not just set to take out the rich boomers, or is that not possible? Not take them out as in kill them, but just take them off
of course
the
it can.
fuel payment.
They keep saying it's means tested.
Yeah.
It's just mean.
It doesn't seem to be means tested enough, does it? If you like you say, you can be on 13,000 and you're cut off.
Yeah, and I think state pensions in the order of about £600-700 a month for a person on their own. They're going to get a couple of other bits and bobs. It's very easy to not even make the 13,000. So there are going to be a lot of people who would have relied on that £300 They made all the difference. £300 probably would have gone a long way to funding the whole of their winter fuel. A lot of them would have been on key meters, and that would have just kept them going all the way through, and the pension would have topped it up. They have secured the triple lock, and that is good. It's good for the old people, but it's still not enough. And most people that are on the triple lock, that are running it, will have over 13,000 anyway.
Yeah, I'm
coming
not sure
in.
about the triple lock if it's even sustainable. But the winter fuel just seems mean. But maybe it's the same thing.
Well, I think the point I'm trying to make very badly is that it best serves those that have got private pensions and not entirely reliant on the welfare state. So that's all very good. If you've worked hard and you've managed to get yourself a 25 grand a year pension and that goes up in line with a certain rate, great. Good on you. Plus you get a bit on top from the government. You're going to be okay. You've got two of you in the household. You might have 30, 40,000 pounds a year's worth of pensions coming in. That's going to look after you. No mortgage, etc. It's going to be a couple of holidays a year for you. Great stuff. But obviously, those are the people that don't need looking after. But it doesn't take a lot for people to fall away. And then before you know it, they're on 15, 16,000 a year. That's not enough to sustain them. They've got a house, they've got maintenance, they've got a car, they've got to get about, the public services are rubbish, etc., etc., etc. And before you know it, you haven't got any money for winter fuel and it's freezing. But luckily, we've got global warming. So perhaps we'll stop moaning about that.
Maybe we'll start making that argument. Yeah, it's tricky. You've got to be tough on some things, not on others. Thatcher was tough on the Falklands. She was right. She was tough on poll tax. She was wrong. Blair was wrong about the Iraq War. And these people can't turn around. I mean, Blair just did that. No, it seemed like such a crazy thing. Knowing it seemed to just be. It's a managerial elite getting carried away and just saying we're infallible. And Starmer doesn't seem capable of any kind of reflection. So he'll just plow it into the ground. I mean, I think it's all policy detail aside, it's just a strategic mistake. But who are they for? Because it seems to me they've just tried to alienate virtually every group: pub goers, old people. They're talking about single people now, and if they get the council tax discount, trying to take away my council tax discount. Obviously, they've gone after all English people, all working class people. They've gone after virtually everyone. It seems to be. Is there anyone left?
No, and we've yet to have the budget, which comes on the 30th of October.
Oh, God.
Which they've all prepped us to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So goodness only knows what that's going to lead. We know that fuel duty is going to go up on things like petrol and diesel because the prices are coming down at the moment, and that's the pattern.
People say that Starmer is doing that trick of lowering expectations and it'll be slightly better. I wouldn't be surprised with Starmer if it's just even worse.
Yeah. No, I don't think he thinks that's not service.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, nothing so far suggests that he's politically intelligent.
No. You need the word politically in there, really. That's a good question. Is Starmer stupid, or is he just lacking in self-awareness? In the episode with Ed Dutton, nickdixon.net, £5 a month, we get into Starmer's personality profile and how he was, his mother was ill as a child, so he was never allowed to be a child. He had to be an adult, and couldn't really have emotions. He just had to sort of get it done. And he seems like Ed sort of thinks he's maybe has borderline personality disorder because of that. There's something going on there. Famously, he doesn't have a person. He doesn't have a favorite novel. He doesn't have a favorite poem. He falls asleep, hits the pillow, falls asleep immediately, then doesn't dream. Isn't an introvert or an extrovert. There's nothing there. No, he's not. He won't allow anything. He won't allow any basic self-exploration. So he can't have empathy and change his mind about something because that would involve he'd have to question his whole identity and immediately he'd go mad.
Well, that's probably why he was relatively successful in law, because it's all very sort of black and white, isn't it? These are the rules, and then you must follow them. And you don't apply any other thinking to them. All you need to do is remember all the rules.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer loves the rules.
He bloody loves
he's setting them.
He's setting them. I love my own rules. Rules are rules. You just came up with it yesterday, Keir, and now it can't be changed. You can. You've written it in pencil. No, I'm going to put it in pen later, and that it can't be changed. The sausages are coming. All right, we've probably done enough. That's over an hour. Order. Sorry for keeping you, Paul. You stepped in at the last minute. Thank you very much for your time.
I absolutely love it, Nick, so thank you for asking me.
Gammon of the people, as Bob Marley famously sang. Where can people find the People's Gammon, Paul?
You can find me at Paul Cox Comedy on Twitter and absolutely everywhere else. I keep threatening to do a podcast of my own and build my YouTube channel with something meaningful. At Paul Cox Comedy on YouTube as well. There's nearly 1,000 subscribers on there, and I'm not doing anything with it at the moment. So I need to do that and build that up. And then as soon as I do, Nick, get you on, of course. But I just need to figure out what it is because it's got to be interesting to me and interesting to other people. But maybe a light-hearted look at something. Don't know what yet, but we'll find out.
We light-hearted look at something, yeah. We don't know what. You can bet your ass it'll be light-hearted. It'll be light-hearted AF.
I don't think I can. People don't. Every time I try and do serious in any way, people don't expect it and therefore don't like it of me.
I know. I can get a bit serious on my Substack and thinking I'm a kind of literary genius or something. Yeah, I can go a bit up my arse sometimes.
But you're not, though, are you? Is what you mean. And you and I are passionate about certain things. Just because we're able to make those things funny doesn't mean that we can't be passionate about them not being funny. So, but I think a lot of our credence maybe comes from just being amusing in some way. Because there are lots of people out there that can be very, very clever, but they can't all bring the light to that darkness.
You've got to bring that light touch, the light touch of the people scamming. Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Just not doing a podcast would be a great service because so many people have them, including me.
This is exactly where I've got to so far. But maybe I'll just talk to maybe the people's gammon talks to people. But
we can work on it.
That could be horrific.
You can do this one, and you already have done it now twice in its new format. So we can
just keep coming back every fortnight on this, and we'll talk about.
But we can work it out. I mean, I took the Weekly Skeptic to 2 million downloads, and then binned it off. I'm a podcast guru. Some people think I started trigonometry. We don't talk about it. I won't talk about it. We don't. But some people say I didn't. But I'm able to. I can do these things. I sound like a sort of Alan Partridge when you're coming up with concepts. Suddenly flashed into my head of just an Alan Partridge.
You need a dictaphone.
Yeah, the people's gammon looks at things in a light-hearted way. My Starmer voice is the same as my Partridge voice. I can't do it. We'll think of something. But for now, go to Paul Cox Comedy on all platforms. And, of course, go to nickdixon.net, as I've said a few times throughout this, for all your Nick Dixon needs. But we've got the Jolly Heretic Ed Dutton. That's a great interview, only available on there. We've got my articles only available on there, my Farage one, Betty Snellis, and all my ongoing articles and podcasts I'll be releasing. But we are doing the current thing for free because I'm a great guy. And you can follow me at Nick Dixon Comic, which I always think about changing, but it is at Nick Dixon Comic on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I do have the YouTube channel as well, but the main thing is nickdixon.net. And thank you very much for your Paul. Fellow part at the very end. So professional until then.
Really unlike you, Nick.
I know.
Really unlike
we'll edit that.
It is. I've seen you finish 100 GB shows under 1,000% stress effortlessly.
Yes, with no auto cue, nothing in the auto cue. Lewis Schaefer
in your ear.
I know.
Trying to guess when he could get the last word in.
The most annoying thing is people tweeting, "Oh, don't be mean to Lewis. Oh, Lewis is great." It's like, yeah, try working with Lewis. Okay, just try working with Lewis. The person who's been escorted away from 2 prior jobs by the police. Try working with that guy. See how it goes for you. Because I'm trying to host. I've got a thing in my ear. I'm trying to do my own auto cue, clicking it up and down. Got to get my chair. Got to get the auto cue lined up so I can see it. I'm doing all this most of this myself. There's some help getting my water. Then Lewis is like, let's get a photo. Let's fucking not get a photo. How about let's not get 1,000 shit photos of me on the internet that my enemies could use against me forever. Let's get a photo. No, I don't want a fucking photo. Anyway, I'm fine.
Yeah, good point.
The point is, Paul, thank you for your time. And thanks for doing the show. And thank you to everyone for listening. And we'll see you again next week.